Welcome to More Than a Therapy Couch, the podcast where we go beyond the walls of traditional therapy sessions. I'm your host, Tiana. In a world that's constantly changing, so are the ways we navigate our mental and emotional health. We're here to embrace the notion that healing and growth extend far beyond the walls of a therapy room. Throughout this podcast, we'll be joined by a diverse array of experts and everyday individuals with compelling stories to help bring awareness to whatever you may be facing. We'll unpack the complexities of the human experience, tackle taboo topics, and challenge the stigmas surrounding mental health. So grab your emotional support water bottle, find a comfy spot, and join us as we embark on a journey that goes more than a therapy couch. Let the session begin. As a reminder, the topics discussed are for educational purposes only and are not meant to be taken as clinical advice. If you are concerned about you or a loved one's mental health, consult a mental health professional or call SAMHSA's 24-hour hotline at 1-800-662-HELP. Welcome back to More Than a Therapy Couch. I'm your host, Tiana, and I'm here today with my co-host, Zach. On this episode, we are going to be speaking with an experienced LGBTQIA therapist from Tree of Life Counseling Center, Lisa Miller-Samber.
Hi.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm doing good. So, Lisa, for the viewers who are listening in, can you just tell them a little bit about yourself and how long you've been practicing?
So I've been practicing about, got to go to the way back machine for this one. Probably about, I would say 16, 17 years.
It's definitely a lot of experience.
Yeah.
You look a lot younger.
As I do. Thank you, Zach. Which is not what you'd normally say, so thank you.
Yeah.
Was
Were
there-
you practicing as a 13-year-old?
Yes.
It's crazy.
Giving advice to her friends on the playground at recess.
Probably.
And then was there anything that was like particular that kind of led you to becoming a therapist?
Well, interestingly enough, when I was a teenager, of course, having teenage angst and going through teenage things, I always thought like, I want to be a therapist and help other teenagers. But my life didn't lead that way at first. So I had originally gone to college for journalism and decided that that was not it. And left college. I've had a windy road. Left college a little early. And then I was trying to figure out what I want to do, where I want to be. And I found myself in massage therapy back in like 96 before it was a thing. Mm-hmm. So I went to massage school. And I did massage for about 15 years. And I learned really amazing things. I did a lot of Reiki, different bodywork styles, and a lot of it ended up being emotional work. And then I had moved, came back, and decided, okay, now is my time to pursue psychology. So I was still doing massage, and I went back to school and got my bachelor's in psychology, and then went for my master's, stopped massage, and got into the counseling world. And it's just interesting because the path just led back to exactly where I wanted to be in the first place.
I think that's a really interesting journey. And with both massage therapy and, counseling, you're helping people and like healing them. You may be healing them in different ways, but you're still doing like that same process of like helping them heal, whether that's physically or emotionally. Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I was doing massage during 9/11, and I would work on people, like parents of people that had passed, and just having that amazing experience of just kind of giving them massage and talking to them and having them be emotional and be able to be in that space. It was amazing. And then transitioning over to talk therapy, which was weird that I couldn't touch anybody, but it was like, all right, I can't, okay, I'm just going to sit here and listen. But it kind of, one goes more into the other than you would think.
Absolutely. So on this episode, we are kind of talking about what it means to be transgender, what the actual word transgender means. Last week, we spoke about just LGBT, what each of those letters kind of stand for, and how they kind of affect society. So before we kind of, though, go into the deep dive of what transgender means, I think it's very important for the viewers to understand the difference between gender identity, gender expression, and sex. Would you be able to just explain the difference between the three?
Sure, absolutely. So when we talk about sex, that is more the medical of what is your anatomy, right? So what are you born with, what society views, and the doctors, see as your parts are, that's your sex, right? So either female, male. And then when we get, so it's more, I think of it as more medical, or it is more medical. And so then when we get into gender identity, it's kind of somebody's innermost concept of who they are, right? And so that could be male, female, it could be both, it could be neither, right? And so it's how do they, and it could be congruent with their sex, or it can be something different than their sex, right? So it's how do you identify? What do you feel like? What does your heart tell you? So gender expression is kind of your outward expression of how do you feel? What do you identify as in that moment? Clothing, could be clothing, makeup, shoes you're wearing, nail polish on your nails, characteristics that you display. So anything like that would be gender expression, how you're expressing yourself according to how you feel and what your innermost feelings are.
Absolutely. And between the three, what would you say that a lot of viewers or just maybe society kind of get confused in regards to like the stigma regarding all of these types of phrases?
I think a lot of people get confused in just because somebody. So I put it like this, and this is not my own, I did not make it up, but who you go to bed as is very different than who do you go to bed with, right? And so there's always that misconception of, oh, if you're trans, then you must like this, be attracted to this person, or if you're identifying as this, then it must be this, right? And there's just, such a spectrum now and probably always, but that is being expressed as far as identity, as far as expression, all of it. So I think there's just such misconceptions around what exactly all of these things are, that it has to be, we talk about the non-binary, right, which being transgender, how people identify, it's a lot of, there's male or female, or it has to be this way. And I think people continue to see that as, okay, if you're this, you're this. If you're wearing a dress, then you have to like men. Or if you're wearing, jeans and a button-up shirt, like, oh, then you must be this. So I think it's just, there's such a spectrum out there now.
Absolutely.
And people don't realize. And I think people don't realize, so it tends to get very generalized. And it's certainly not. It's so different for everybody.
Absolutely. I feel like I want to say like 5-10 years ago, it was very like black and white, and now there's a lot of gray area that we're all seeing. But we're going to take a little bit of a commercial break, and we'll be right back after our sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by Tree of Life Counseling Center, where people come to heal, deal, and learn to thrive. They currently have immediate availability for talk therapy and medication management with a team of over 50 licensed clinicians. Are you feeling alone? We all can use someone to talk to. Call 732-393-8391 or visit us at www.treeoflifecc.org to start your journey of self-discovery and healing today.
We're here talking about trans and pride.
We're back. So Lisa, would you be able to explain to those who may not understand what exactly it means to be transgender?
I can, and I'm going to read it a little bit because I don't want to completely.
So you can give us the textbook definition, and then we can discuss more about it.
So according to the Human Rights Campaign and other sources, to be transgender, or the term transgender, never transgendered, we're not doing that. It's an umbrella term for people whose gender identity and gender expression is different from cultural expectations based on the sex. So medically, they were assigned at birth. Transgender does not imply any specific sexual orientation. It may a person might identify as straight, gay, lesbian, asexual, bisexual, etc. So it's somebody, a transgender person is someone who feels that their sex at birth does not match what they feel on the inside. And so they take steps to transition so their body feels more congruent, and they feel more congruent with who they feel they are, or the sex that they feel they are. Gender they feel they are.
Makes sense. Does that apply if you want to identify as an alien? Or a duck?
I mean, there are some people that may feel kind of alien in their bodies, especially when they're not congruent with how they were born or assigned at birth. So that's what it's, but that's what it's called. Like, so if it's your, I guess, gender assigned at birth, when that's not congruent. So sometimes people do feel alien in their body because they don't feel right in their body.
Yeah.
And then is there a difference between being non-binary and being transgender?
Yes, and there are spectrums to both. So someone who identifies as non-binary, they feel like they are, I guess, neither nor. It's something, there's somewhere in the middle. And that could be, one day they might feel a little more feminine and one day they might feel a little bit more masculine. And somewhere in the middle, they just might just kind of feel, I guess, agender would be the word. So it doesn't mean nothing, which I think is another common, preconception. It just means that there's a spectrum. They're not on the binary, which is male or female, which we've all like grown up with, and that's been, you're either or. So being non-binary, because being male or female is binary. So non-binary is just kind of in between, just being kind of, not necessarily neither nor. I think it's just more being able to kind of be
like fluid, sort of.
Yes.
fluid in between.
Is this how you would explain pronouns that are like he or they, or she, or like she them?
So that was going into my next
sorry.
question. How does someone know? How does someone know like what pronouns to use for someone?
I mean, the best way is to ask, and not in a way that's like, "What are you?" Because it's not a what. It's not about that. It's okay. Well, what are your pronouns? And not even like, what are your preferred pronouns? Because sometimes people don't consider them preferred. It's who they are, right? And so I think the best way to find out is, okay, what are your pronouns? This way you could be more clear. It's coming from them. It's not insulting. You're not insinuating anything.
Yeah.
And people are, they'll tell you. So they might say he, they. They might say he, she, they. They might cover it all.
If someone covered it all, like what's the appropriate way to then refer to them?
Again, I think that would be a question to ask. Like I know for myself, I've asked, like, what are you feeling today?
Okay.
Like what pronoun are you using today? And they might say all of them, or they might say, what, any of them is fine. Okay, great.
So in terms of like pronouns for like specifically she, he, if they feel like they can identify as both, most of the time they'll go by like they, them, because it's a broader term and I'll use both of those from my understanding.
Yeah, I think it's so personal for everybody.
It really depends.
And that's why it's like, all right, let's just ask. It's a question. Why not? It can't, if you guess and make up, make things up for yourself, or if you act scared or you're like, I don't know what they are, it's not, then that kind of leads to, it's kind of more of a microaggression of like, okay, we're not a what? People aren't.
We're still human. We're still people.
People are people, and this is what they. This
But what
is
if
what
we
they identify
accidentally
with.
mess up the pronoun too? Is that
How would you go about?
yeah?
Best is just to apologize, say the correct pronoun, and move on.
Okay.
Don't like belabor it. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's kind of more of like, I'm so sorry. Okay. And then remember it for the next time or utilize it the next time.
Okay.
And there have been multiple times where actually clients here, they've come up to the window and like, we're like, okay, yeah, she'll blah, blah, blah. And they're like, my pronouns are they, them.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh my gosh, so sorry.
Right.
And we just kind of move on from there. But that's one thing that I always liked when I was a care coordinator is that always confirming. So like a lot of times like the therapist would say, oh, this person, their preferred name is now this. And I would get really excited being like, okay, I can't wait to change it in the chart so that everything's accurate and everything's good. Yeah. Obviously what they discuss in session is private, but even just like being staff of a counseling place, like being mindful of that. Like we want to call you by what you want to be called by.
For sure.
Yeah. And someone wants to feel safe coming here and they want to feel seen by everybody, not just like if they're my client, they're not just want to be seen by me. Because for me, they enter my room and if they tell me that, my pronouns are she and I'm transitioning, I'm a trans woman, okay, that's how I see you. End of story. Even if they came to me before they started transitioning, okay, that's who you are. That's how I see you. Yeah. Right. And so that's great in my room, but then they still have to be out in the rest of our in the world, but also here in our center. So it's nice that it's a place where people can feel safe and they can feel able to be themselves.
And that's the whole point of therapy. Like someone may start counseling because I talked about this on one of the last episodes, they may not know what they're feeling. They may not know if they want to go by he, him anymore. Maybe they want to go by she, her. Right. Maybe they're like, oh, actually, I don't want to go by she, her. I think I want to go by they, them. That's the whole point of counseling is being able to have that safe space to kind of talk through and process all of your emotions that you're kind of going through.
Right. Absolutely.
So that kind of led into my next question. So how can someone who identifies as transgender benefit from counseling?
I think, listen, I tell my clients, like, and I could always define this too, but I'll tell them, like, listen, I'm a cisgender old lady. So, like, I don't know what it's like to walk the path of being, transgender in that way. But, like, I'm here to, like, love you on your path, be here for you, hold the space for you. Like, I'm not even going to pretend that I've even had any of this experience, right? So I think it's important for a person in such an unsafe world, because let's face it, people who are transgender, they're not safe in a lot of areas, in a lot of states, in a lot of, maybe even in their own house, right? Or maybe they might not feel so safe within themselves because they just don't know, So I think it's beneficial that they have a safe space to be in so they can express themselves and talk about, here's what I'm thinking, here's where on my tough days when, because of feeling like I was born in the wrong body, like, this is what I need to talk about. Here's what I'm struggling with. That they have a place to do so and also be celebrated in a place, somewhere to be celebrated when maybe in other parts of their life they aren't. Or it might be, right? It might be a good place where I might know have some links that they can go to. Or there's people I follow on Instagram that are amazing resources for a trans person, that are healthy resources for a trans person, that I could say, hey, why don't you check out this person? I saw this on Instagram, or I saw this even TikTok, or I saw this is amazing. Would this be helpful? So I think it's a place for, like, resources, for safety, for somebody just to hold that space for them, to be who they are, because they've spent so long not feeling like they are who they should be. I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think that makes perfect sense. And I think what's really nice too is we've had this conversation in the past of, like, is social media really beneficial in terms of, like, therapy and things along lines of that? It can be. Social media can be so useful, educational. It can make a client feel not less alone, seeing all these, like, influencers or even celebrities, like, wow, they're doing that?
Yeah.
Like, they decided to wear dresses, like, oh, maybe I like that. That's really cute. So doing things kind of like that doesn't make them feel alone, but I think that's very important. What you said is making sure that it's valuable content, because there are certain things that are put out there that are not accurate.
No, and a little crazy. Right.
Yes.
Right. Like that, right, but more inaccurate and just unhealthy.
Yes.
So if there are people that have, like, I follow Alok Vemnan, who's amazing. They are amazing. And they're a beautiful speaker. They're also a comedian. They do all these things, and they also wear dresses and makeup and don't shave, and they're just a beautiful person. So they're a good person to watch. They're so eloquent, and they talk about gender. They talk about gender identity. They talk about all of it. So that's, like, a useful resource to say, like, okay, there's that way of being a trans person. Just like there's Pink Manta. I think his name is Skylar, but a trans,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Right.
yes.
So a trans male who has shown their journey as well, to say, like, okay, but that's what his journey looks like. Very different from Alok's,
Yes.
but that's their journey. So they get to see kind of, like, different people's journeys to be able to say, okay, it's not so cut and dry like everybody thinks.
Yeah.
I can kind of be or transition as I feel works for me.
Yeah.
Same with Jonathan Van Ness.
I've heard
They're a
of them.
riot and go by, like, every pronoun.
One of
and
our producers
they're
loves
amazing.
John Van Ness.
I love John Van Ness, right? And so they also have a huge presence and has beautiful long hair, and sometimes they'll wear jeans and sometimes a beautiful dress. And and again, it just showing how different everybody's transition can be, and that's okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of different processes, and that was one of the things we talked about last week, was even just, like, coming out as part of the LGBT community. It looks different for everyone. There are some people that they've always felt different in their body. There's some people, I've said this last episode, they were married to a man and now they're 30 and they're like, I don't like men. I want to be with women.
Yeah.
So everyone's journey is different. And I think just finding your own way and just finding your place in the world and what works best for you.
Yeah. And I think it's about being happy. Like, no matter what anybody else says or what they feel is right or what they feel is wrong, like, in the end, like, you're the one living with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think we put so much on society and what they think. And especially, listen, I'm whatever age I am, but, like, I was present for the AIDS crisis, and I was present for, so many issues in the 80s, like late 70s, 80s, you know, and all these preconceived notions of like, oh, gay people, or oh, that person's wearing, you know. So, you know, coming up to now and, you know, I'm still of that generation, but being able to kind of shift and be like, wow, there's so much room.
There's
for
been so
many
much
things.
changes.
Right. And it's not what everybody thought. Like, like my aunt had friends who were, you know, gay and they were lovely. And back in the day, it was like, I know gay people. You know, because that's like what it was, right? That's what
So
it was
wild.
like.
Yeah.
It is. It's wild. And now I think there's so much opportunity for, again, I think just people to be who you are. Like, I know it's corny, but like, yeah, love is love. Love is hard enough to find, especially in this world now, that it's like, just go and be happy. Who cares? Mind your business. It gets hard. What I found with a lot of my clients, like, you know, we talk about like, okay, well, how old is how old are your parents?
Yeah.
How old are the people in your life, right? Because again, my generation is going to be like, hell no. I mean, not me. But there's people my
older
age and
generation,
over.
for sure, yeah.
It's like, so it's not even in their scope of anything.
No, because
You
they
know?
don't understand. They've been raised
No.
more than half of their life thinking that the world is a certain way. And unfortunately, at least I've come to terms with, depending on who they are, what relationship I have with them, their age, and all of that, depends on what I'm going to talk to them about. I'm not
Right.
going to talk to them about certain things if I know what they're already going to say. Why hurt yourself like that? You already
Right.
know. There's no point.
One of our clinicians was saying to me the other day, him and his husband, their cleaning person is like a devoutly religious woman, and she refers to his husband as his friend.
Well, it's classic, right?
But it's like, you've seen my bedroom. We have one bed.
Right.
It's like we're not friends. You know, we're friends, but
Right. It's like the old school, like, oh, there's Aunt Edna and her roommate. You know, but now I think things are changing for the better, but I also think things are still scary.
Yeah.
So like I remember being, oh God, my babysitter growing up, Cheryl, love her. And her wife live in Arizona. I was in their wedding. But I remember my mom, she sent my mom a picture. She was in the military and whatever we had said, I was probably in my teens. And she was like, yeah, Cheryl lives with a woman, you know? And it was like, okay. And I remember being like, well, what if I was gay? And she was just like, okay. I mean, my mom, like growing up in Brooklyn, like I feel really, not going to say my dad had the most open mind. But my mom was very like, okay, it's just a harder life right now. But love who you need to love, you know, kind of thing. And I remember that and feel grateful for it because I think that set the stage for me to be Gen X and be able to work with people in the queer community and get rid of all those preconceptions that I remember from when I was younger. You know, in full disclosure, my daughter's like, I'm lesbian. And I'm like, I don't care. You know what? Like, whatever. Right? She's 12. And, you know, she's like, oh, what if, you know, ask me that kind of similar question. But I consider myself, I like girls. And I'm like, okay, listen. Yeah. As long as they're nice to you, as long as you're nice to them, as long as you're happy, you find somebody that loves you, I don't care.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like,
and,
do you?
And not only that, considering her age, like, it may change.
It may. And if it doesn't, it doesn't.
Exactly. And that's
Whatever.
totally fine. But
Yeah.
I think what was nice is that you have that relationship also with your daughter where you have that safe space where she was able to go to you with a feeling or an emotion of that sense. And then also being like, okay, that's great. It doesn't need to be a big deal. It doesn't need to be like an, oh my God thing. Like, okay.
Whatever.
And we go from there.
Well, and I've also like, you know, and I've raised her like that. And again, working with clients, I'm working with someone right now whose son just came out as trans and they have a really hard time with it. And they're a little older than myself, you know, and we're talking a lot about like, yes, validating, okay, this is not what you expected. This is not even in your scope of knowledge. As far, I mean, they know, you know, they're intelligent people, but for them, it's like,
where do I go from here? Like, what do I exactly?
Are they the same person? What do I do? What if when they start wearing dresses? And it's like, okay, but we're going to focus on that's your child. And yes, there's a grieving period. Yes, you're allowed to feel how you're allowed to feel. Yeah, all these things are valid for you.
Yes.
And also here's what she's going to be going through. And how do you you don't have to love it right now. You don't have to feel happy about it right now, but it's still your kid. And so let's figure out a way that you can support them in their journey as you go through your own journey and trying to keep them both a little bit separate because yours is yours and theirs is theirs. But still remembering the core of your child is the core of your child. And you raised a great child.
Exactly.
So, you know, it's kind of finding that balance and validating everybody, that it doesn't mean just because someone's, you know, transitioning or transgender, like it doesn't, I don't know, doesn't change who they are internally.
Exactly, like
That's
their
important.
personality or anything along the lines of that. It may
makes them
change
better.
how they express themselves and things along that, but exactly, it makes
Right,
them
it makes
feel
them happier and
better and just more comfortable in themselves. And you'll even, I've seen with certain people just like with going to high school and, you know, even after high school, there's just so many people seeing how they were in high school and then seeing them transition.
Right.
And it's like, wow. You just seem so much happier. Like you could literally see like the glow off of them that they just like feel like they're themselves.
Yeah, I had a friend a long time ago, and I remember being at her house, and her dad just seemed so unhappy. Years later, fast forward to now, they transitioned, and they're a huge advocate, like a huge resource in the trans community. And I haven't like met her now, but you know, just seeing pictures or seeing different things, I'm like, you know what, good for them.
Yeah.
Because I remember them being such an unhappy person, and then seeing the pictures, and you know, it's just like, wow, okay, good for them. Like, good for them. And I know it's not traditional, and people don't get it, but you don't get it unless you're kind of there, or I don't know. I have a client that I've been with since before she even started hormones. She started hormones with me. While we were seeing each other, you know, and I still see her, and every time I log on with her, I'm like, "Grr," like, you look so amazing. And it's been so great watching her transition over the years and being able to really celebrate that with her, and also go through the hard times.
Yeah.
Because there is the dysphoria and, you know, things like that, where she's just still trying to find her way in this new world, even though like old to her, new world, you know, but it's been like this amazing experience to just watch her blossom in that way.
Absolutely.
Do you ever have concerns when clients start hormones or, you know, other medical procedures to like facilitate
Like the transition?
the transition?
So when somebody goes for to get hormones, whether it's estrogen or testosterone, the endocrinologist generally requires a letter from the therapist and the psychiatrist, or one. So if I feel that somebody's maybe not mentally in the right place, I probably won't write the letter right away, and then we set goals of what they need to do. So I have a 17-year-old started hormones, and we had a whole conversation about it of like, okay, here's what we need to do, because you're predisposed to this, you have depression, you have these things, and yes, maybe the gender dysphoria, which is not feeling congruent in your body, maybe that affects that. But we need to learn skills, because either way, wherever you go, there you are. So even when you start the hormones, you might experience moodiness, you might experience different things, because she's a trans girl.
Yeah.
So, you know, you might experience these things, and I want you to be able to manage it. So she's been doing amazing. She's been pretty good. Some ups and downs, but she's been great. And now she had a consultation for surgery.
Okay.
So, you know, I wrote the letter, and that, you know, I was like, okay, this is what we need to work on, because here's the reality. And I got all the information from the plastic surgeon and what the both different options entail. So talking about those, and this one's going to cost, this is this. Like, let's look at it.
Yeah.
So we can really kind of work through it in that way. So I wouldn't stop anybody unless I thought they really had some mental health complications. But I'm not worried once we like establish, okay, here's our goals. I'll write you the letter, but keep me informed. Let's keep the doctor informed. This way we can kind of track. But, you know, everybody's done amazing.
That's awesome.
So it's really cool. So, I mean, I don't know. I just love it.
You get to see the whole process
Yeah, I
from
have a
beginning to
couple
end.
people that I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, we've had clients here too. Like, I know my mom especially has seen a few in particular. Seen them transition.
You know, it's a beautiful journey with all its ups and downs. But yeah, I don't worry about it. And if they have an issue, I'm like, all right, call your endocrinologist. Let's make sure, you know, your hormones are where they need to be. And I'm looking for a course to take on the hormonal aspect of it. So hopefully I'll be able to do that soon. But
do you ever feel like, as a self-identified cisgender old lady,
which, by the way, folks, cisgender means that your identity matches with your sex. Okay, continue.
as you self-identified before, do you ever feel like there's a challenge there with working with this population of people?
I don't really feel that way, but I think I'm very open about not being a transgender woman or person. And that, again, I just say, like, I don't know the path you're working on. Like, I let them know that I don't know the exact path, but, like, I'm here for it. But whatever it entails, I am here for it, and I will never judge you, and I will never doubt you in that way, so
Yeah.
hopefully, so I don't really see it as a challenge.
That's great. Because I'm curious if like there's another clinician listening in or watching, like what would you kind of advise them if they've never worked with,
The LGBT population.
exactly.
I mean, I think it's important to educate yourself. My first course I took, I think was like 2016, because I worked in a PHP and we were getting some teens that were considering themselves trans. And, it's not polite to try to get all your information from them. They're not here for that.
They're coming
Right.
to you because they need
they're
guidance.
coming to me. So Rutgers had a course, Becoming a Trans-Inclusive Clinician.
Oh.
And it was a few weeks long, and it was great. And it was like, and even things have even evolved from then. So it's been amazing. So that was the first course I took. And then I just started taking a ton. I think it's important to be educated on what is happening now. Like as the years go by, things shift,
What's
they
changing,
change,
yeah.
and always try to keep up. But definitely being educated and talking to people,
Yeah,
having people
talking
in
to
your
people.
life.
Yeah, talking to people who are part of the community. But one thing that I've seen in terms of like the clients that you work with is, yes, you're not part of the community, but that doesn't mean that you can't be a therapist and guide them.
Right.
Why? Because you took the time to do the research and take the classes, because you want to be that therapist that provides that safe space specifically for this community, which I think is amazing. Kudos to you for that.
But it is a challenge. I think what you see with like race, gender, age, a lot of times people want a therapist that like looks or is like themselves, whatever that looks like. But
Yeah, and I think that's okay. And I'll tell
Yeah.
my clients if they're thinking of transitioning or if they come to me, I'm like, you know what? If I'm not it, let me know. I will
Yeah.
find you your person.
Yeah.
Like if we're not connected or you feel like you want somebody that's trans or part of the community, I will find you the best person for you. I'm not going to be insulted. I'm not going to feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Give me a chance. But I also understand if you feel like you need that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's also one of the best things too. There was a trans man, Tristan Reese, is his name, and he spoke at Monmouth University, and he's someone who had a baby as a trans man. And publicized it and kind of showed his journey and has done a lot for, all people, you know what I mean, but has done a lot and worked with a lot of families and, LGBTQ community and et cetera, et cetera. So they had come to talk about their experience and just, and somebody said, well, how can allies really help the community or be advocates or allies? Like, and he had said, follow people, on Instagram or that are, again, are reputable or whatever. Follow two dads, follow two moms, follow, queer people on social media and be a support rather than the haters that wrote all these comments. Because he had gotten some pretty horrible comments of like, how could you this and that child, all the things. Meanwhile, they've done amazing things with his husband and they have they have a whole thing. But just amazing. So I felt like that was an awesome piece of advice. Like, okay, you could be an ally in so many different ways, including following people going through a transition and be the person that's like, oh my God, you look amazing, or two dads, or, whatever, whatever different families or people are looking like or doing, so that you're boosting them and you're also providing that positive space for them also.
I feel like there's so many different ways that people are supporting each other, especially in the community. There's group therapy, there's free resources, there's resources online, there's a bunch of different things. But in regards to, I guess, a child who may be having these feelings, a child or an adolescent, what advice would you give either them or the parent as they're trying to navigate through this process?
I think it sounds hokey, but like love and patience. And I think parents need to educate themselves. And I think it's really important for parents to reach out to PFLAG, or some kind of something. There's High Tops, there's PFLAG. There's a lot of really great resources for both parents and children to be able to navigate whatever it is they need to navigate. Right? It doesn't mean the mom has to right away go to therapy. It's just a matter of like, okay, let's stop a minute. Because I think a lot of parents panic. What does this mean? What is this going to do? And especially in today's day and age, like it's so evolved and yet it's so not.
Yeah.
Right? The climate political climate in general, not to throw that in there, but but it's real. I have clients that are afraid to go to Florida. Like they won't go. I have a client traveling to Georgia this weekend for like a high school thing and is like, okay, I hope I'm okay. And it's like, that's horrible.
Yeah.
But I think just remembering your kid is your kid, and it's okay that you feel scared, and it's okay that you feel surprised, and it's okay that you might even feel a little angry, all these feelings are okay, but keep them for your own self until you figure them out. And then you have conversations with your child, or let them know, like, listen, I might be struggling with this, and I love you, and we're going to sort this out. And especially for a kid too, it's a process. And some kids know, and some kids aren't so sure. And unfortunately, I think there is kind of that trend culture a little bit too.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, my friends are all doing this, so maybe that's me too. And I think that is the case with anything, not just gender and identity and sexuality, but I think it's taking time to explore and express yourself, and kind of also flag, high top, different groups that you could talk to other kids. And I think just making sure the resources that they have are good and healthy.
Yes.
And maybe parents could help with that also.
Do you think most kids going through this would appreciate or could appreciate that their parents also have to process some kind of adjustment as well?
It depends on the kid.
Okay.
I mean, and different ages. I mean, let's face it, kids are pretty egocentric. And so they want their parents to jump on board immediately.
Yeah.
Adults, I think, have a easier time kind of giving their parents that space. But again, too, like, let's say a kid has been pondering this for 2 years and they come out and their parents are like, hell no. Or they, or it takes them longer to use their pronouns, or it takes them longer to address them by their name that they've chosen. I think they do forget, okay, they've been pondering this for 2 years. Your parent is just finding out about this.
Right.
Like, they need a hot minute. So I think that's part of the process too, is, validating the child and also saying, okay, but we also have to give everybody else a chance to catch up.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. And not, it's so personal, but not personalizing it. Like, nobody's trying to do this to you. Your parents aren't, they don't know.
Yeah.
And then there are parents that don't want to know. And then they're, that's a whole different thing. But if you have parents that are willing or semi-willing, then it's like, all right, let's give them a minute and let's just figure out what you need.
Yeah.
And for parents, let's give you a minute and then we'll figure this one out, or like just see what happens. And I think a lot of it is fear for parents. I found when I've talked to them, they've had a vision of what their children were going to be, right? My daughter's going to get married and they're going to have kids, and which they could still do as a trans person and they could still do as a queer person.
Absolutely.
But again, generational, that wasn't necessarily the thought. So it's remembering, like, okay, you had your daughter, and okay, now your daughter's identifying as a son. It really is a big change.
Yeah.
And so to have patience with themselves, the child to have patience too. It's like, it's just kind of everybody has to navigate things in a little bit of a different way, but it doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's it too.
It's very hard, but I think just being open-minded, and the same thing that you were saying before, like, you may have been in counseling for 2 or 3 years and have talked about this and have been trying to process it with them, and with them as in your therapist, and now you're telling your family, and it can be a lot. It can be kind of like a newsflash, but just allowing everyone to have that space to process, and just being kind to everyone. And at the end of the day, remembering, like, if you really want a relationship with your kid, if you really want a relationship with your parent, you'll find a way to make it work. It doesn't matter what they look like on the outside. If you really care about them as your child or them as your parent, you do what works best for you guys.
Yeah. I mean, it's I don't know. I just love it. It's amazing. And there's so many different aspects to it. And there are aspects to it that are sad and really hard. But the person I'm working with now, she's scared. Yeah. What does this mean? What does it all mean? Okay, but you have to talk to your kid and find out, what does this mean for them?
Yes.
You can't guess. You can't, well, are they going to do this? And when do they start wearing dresses? And, they're growing their hair out. And I'm like, okay, but you have to talk to them and be part of their journey too. Have your journey, but the more you know, maybe the less fear there'll be.
I think some parents also, like, their kid may come out as transgender, and the first thing is, well, you're not getting the surgery.
Right.
Who said I wanted the surgery?
Right. And I think that's another misconception, that everybody who's trans has surgery. Everybody cuts everything off and adds everything in, right? And that's not the case. Just because, and it's extremely impolite to ask somebody, like, never ask a trans person, oh, are you cutting off your...
It's
and
none of your business.
People do. Like, they do. One of my
Oh my
clients,
God.
she
I think
went
it's rude to ask a woman if she's going to have kids. Or
Right,
It's the same.
right.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of it too. Being transgender isn't just I'm not just turning into a boy. Like, there's this. It's another spectrum. So
Yeah.
somebody may choose to, a trans male might choose to have top surgery, right? And so if somebody's assigned female at birth, right? So sex at birth is female, and they are transitioning to be male, they are a trans male. If somebody is assigned male at birth, they are and transitioning, they're a trans woman, right? We got that clear because I know sometimes that can be really
It can
confusing.
definitely. I think you actually went over that with me like years ago.
Right. And
Yeah.
again, it's the same as who you go to bed as is different than who you go to bed with. Who you are has nothing to do with who you sleep with. Right. But there is a spectrum of like, okay, I might be trans, but it does not mean I'm having top surgery and I'm going to go for surgery, phalloplasty, it's called, right? It just, all it is, okay, this is how I'm identifying and I'm going to choose how I'm going to express myself.
You also, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, you can also be trans and not be on hormones.
Yeah. So it really is a journey for everybody involved, I think. So, but there's no set way. So I think that's another preconception about it just means surgery and it means this and but it doesn't. It's everybody's own personal journey.
Feeling stuck mentally and physically? It may be time to supplement your self-care practices with some holistic healing options. Mind the Body Holistic Wellness in Freehold, New Jersey proudly offers a variety of healing modalities including Reiki, massage therapy, reflexology, and Himalayan hot stone massages. For more information or to book an appointment, visit www.mindthebodyhw.com. Now back to our show.
Do you feel like the climate now is making people more comfortable coming out and, being honest with who they are?
I think it depends on where you are.
Okay.
But I think it is. I think it is. I think it's causing people to question themselves a little bit more.
Okay.
Sometimes I wonder if I don't know. I think it depends on where you are. You know what I mean? Like, and I think people are more comfortable.
Maybe versus like Kentucky.
Versus, right, like Florida. But versus Texas.
Sorry,
like
I didn't mean to out the Kentucky people.
I know. I follow this
can't.
person. I got to get my phone, but she does, she's a trans woman and she does like daily blurbs on like all the different laws that are being passed that are anti-queer and anti-trans. And I have to look for her. And she's very involved that way. But I think there's so much more available now that wasn't available. Yeah. So people can pursue endocrinologists. They can pursue surgery. There are different clothing designers. There's different, now they have underwear for tucking. They have.
that whole Target thing or whatever.
That was stupid. But they have, binders. They have resources to get free things, electrolysis. Like there's so much more out there so that people can get what they need. There's actually for teens, and I don't know if it's only for teens. In Princeton, there's a place, the Closet at High Top, and that's in Princeton. And they've done a couple of pop-ups recently for prom wear. So it's gender affirming. You can go in there for free, pick out a gown, pick out a suit. People will fit you. Right?
That is so sweet.
So amazing. So they do clothing pop-ups. I want to talk about us getting a little closet together and donating. Anyway, so like there are so many more resources that it has made it possible versus, back in the 80s when people were considered, I guess, cross-dressers or transvestites or whatever. Now there's places, and people might still choose to cross-dress and not be gay, not be transitioning. Yeah, I don't know. Did I answer your question? I think I got lost.
No, you definitely did.
I got badly excited, and then I have information, and
No,
then I
it's
can't
great.
stop.
I mean,
Let me see
still
if I
new
can.
to me, so I'm learning a lot.
So we're just getting to the end of our episode, and we love to ask all of our guest speakers this question. And the question is, if you were stuck on an island and can bring one book with you, what book would you bring with you and why?
Oh, God, I can't choose just one. God. I don't know. That's a good one.
If you can't pick one book, if you could bring one item.
Oh, I don't know. I like things.
I like lots of things.
I need lots of books and lots of things. I don't know. The first one that comes to my mind, growing up, one of my favorite books was A Wrinkle in Time.
Okay.
Madeline L'Engle, however you pronounce her last name. I always loved that one. it's a good read. You know what a really cool book is? I don't know. This is just like a random recommendation. So Matt Haig is an author, and he wrote The Midnight Library. And I believe he's a pretty good advocate for mental health. I believe queer issues as well. I don't know. I have to look a little bit more into it, but definitely mental health. So he wrote The Midnight Library, which is a really cool book that I recommend about somebody who she is struggling and tries to end her life. And she's kind of in this in-between, and she ends up in the Midnight Library. And so, in the first part of the book, she's talking about if I only would have done this, and if I would have done this, or stayed with this person, or had this experience, etc. So when she's in the Midnight Library, it's all the volumes of her life and what could have been. And so while she's in that in-between space, she's able to go in some of these different paths that she didn't choose.
That's really cool.
No, but it's a really neat book, and it's kind of like keeps that perspective of like you could have, you coulda, woulda, shoulda, all you want, but you still never know what the outcome would have been.
Yeah.
And where you are could be the best outcome of all.
It could be.
So you never know.
We have to pretend it is.
But I like that book. But there's so many books now that are coming to my mind. You can't just ask for one.
You know what?
I'd have to bring my glasses too, since I'm old and can't read anymore. But I always say it, ending with it, listen, there's so many resources and amazing resources out there for people, many people, Jacob Tobia, Alok Memnon, Jonathan Van Ness. Who else did I read? A bunch of other books that are people's journeys of transitioning or just their gender journey. And actually, Jonathan Van Ness has, I think it's Netflix. My phone's vibrating. I think it's Netflix called Getting Curious with Jonathan Van Ness. And there is an episode on gender. And it's really cool because they bring in themselves, Alok, a two-spirit person from a Native American tribe, and another person that I think is more non-binary and expresses themselves in different ways. And it's really an informational episode to kind of, it also gives history of coming out and where that started back in the day and what that meant. So it's really neat. Highly recommend that episode if you're kind of questioning gender and what it means and different things. So that was a really Getting Curious with Jonathan Van Ness. That was a really cool episode. I really liked it.
Is there ever a future in our lifetime where you don't have to come out?
I wish it was now. I think it just should be.
Is it? I feel like it's almost weird that you do.
So we talked a little bit about this on the last episode. Sorry,
I wasn't there.
It's okay. So why is it that like people in the straight community don't have to come out?
Hey, I'm straight.
Why is it that the gay community has to do that? And I think definitely things have changed over the past couple of years in regards to like the LGBT community. Gay marriage didn't even become legal until like 2016. Yeah. That was only like a couple years ago. That wasn't even. That was not even 10 years ago.
And being homosexual was considered a mental health issue back in the DSM, the diagnostic criteria. It was a illness. But I think according to the episode that Jonathan Van Ness did, coming out had come from like old society, I think back in New York. And so when a man would, because of course it was focused on men at that point, but when a man would express being gay or was gay, they were taken to, I guess, like they came out into these clubs or like introduced into whatever part of society, I believe. I have to like rewatch it, but that was kind of it.
Okay.
But I agree. I don't think people should have to come out. And if they do, I feel like it should be a celebration. Yeah. Back again, when I was growing up, it was like, okay, I have something to tell you. Yeah. It was like this really like horrible thing. I have to tell my parents that I'm gay. Like it was this like negative connotation instead of it being like what I try to tell my people that I work with is this is a celebration. You're not presenting it as there's something wrong with me. How can you present it as, hey, this is something about me and I'm sharing it with you. And instead of it being like I have this deep dark whatever, like, hey, I'm sharing something with you. Yeah. That's great for me. There's nothing wrong with you. But I think it's always been made to be so wrong that coming out became like
a really big thing.
Yeah, and it's associated with being bad. And hopefully that has shifted, that it's not bad anymore. It's just, okay, I'm just letting you know that I'm gay, straight, bi, whatever.
There's people that literally have coming out parties. There was one of these shows that I watched. It's like a reality TV show. And the girl talked about how she, over the past couple of years, have done a lot of thought in regards to like who she feels attracted to and all of these things. And they literally threw her like a coming out party on the TV show. And of course, MTV like promoted it and all that. But just like the fact that like people were there to like you said, celebrate her and all of that, I think is, you know, amazing. Going back to your question though, I think my generation and younger generations, what I'm hoping, and I hope to raise like my future family like this, like it doesn't matter, like educating them from like a young age so that if they do decide that is a path they want to follow, it's okay, like I think I have a crush on this girl. Okay.
All right.
What's the big deal?
Cool.
Right.
Again,
And
is she nice to
yeah.
you? Is she does she treat you well? Does she respect you? Fabulous. Can't wait to meet her.
Yeah.
Instead of having to be a whole
I've-
sit down like, okay, I have something, which is how it used to be.
Doesn't matter.
Hey, thank you for coming on the podcast. Do. Someone's got to take a nap now.
Someone's gotta eat my lunch.
Yeah, we got to eat
Thanks,
the PB&J.
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks
for coming on. Well, we'll be back next episode.
How is that gonna end?
I'll crop it and